Should the 49ers trade or restructure Deebo Samuel?
Okay, so here's the situation with Deebo Samuel. His contract is set to expire 2026, which I love that flexibility. And that's what makes this really tough. However, if you restructure him, you save $15 million. That's a lot of money that they could use this year. If you trade him, you're going to take a cap hit of $21.7 million. And you're going to save $6.9 million. Now, that $6.9 million is significant, but also saving all that money next year with him not on the roster is also significant. I mean, I really could see a scenario where all three are a good choice. Either let him write out his contract, restructure him, or trade him. For me, if I had my preference, I would trade him because I would love to save that full dollar amount next year with him not on the roster. The $6.9 million you save this year is still crucial to going out and getting another player in free agency. It more than covers whoever you would draft for that third round pick or whatever you're going to get for him. And the $15.1 million is enticing if I restructure him. But what's not enticing is making sure that he's locked in no matter what on your team through 2026. And when you look at Deebo Samuel, over the last 2 seasons since he signed his contract, compared to the season that he had before, which was, we all agree, phenomenal season, was probably never repeatable. Understand that. But the last 2 seasons combined, he's had just 280 more yards than he had in that one season and only 3 more touchdowns. He's been injured both those seasons. I know people like to talk about, well, without him last year, they were 0-2. But a big part of that was Trent Williams was also out. The year before, they were 4-0 without him. I don't know what his value is or how much it is at this point. I know that he's important. I'm not saying he can't take over games. I just feel like it's few and far between. And if your data point that you're pulling for importance is games that Trent Williams also missed, I have a hard time leaning towards Deebo Samuel being the reason that they lost those games over Trent Williams. So I would personally trade him.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand people saying, you know what, not this year. You don't save that much money. He's 2 years left on his deal. He's only 28. Trade him next year. Save more money. Get 1 more year of his prime. I get that, but to me, Deebo Samuel's declining. I don't know if everyone would agree with that, but I don't think I think his route running is getting worse. His ability to separate is getting worse. I think his durability is getting worse. So I would trade him now as well and bank on whatever they could get for him being, like, say it's a draft pick, being a full round or 2 higher than what they could get for him next year.
And by the way, if they make this move next year, they only save $2.2 million more than they do this year. So it's not a significant amount.
Good point.
And again, you're saving that full cap hit next year. So really you're saving way more money next year if you make the move this year. And that's really what I'm looking at. It's like, I think they can stay competitive without him. I think that frees up enough money to help them this year go get an impact player at another position, and also frees up $28 million next year. That's a lot of money to free up for next season. So I would make the move now. If there's something out there, I would do it.
To me, they traded, they paid Deebo what they paid him because they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. He was the offense. They gave him so many touches in 2021, and now they can't anymore. They can't justify paying him $28 million a year. He's redundant. 11 targets and however many carries in the Super Bowl is way too much. But as long as he's making that much money, you have to give him the ball that much at the expense of players who are better than him at this point. I think the team gets better without him. You could trade him while he still has a lot of value for a player at another position or the same position, whatever. Get a younger, cheaper player with a whole future ahead of him and still have the best group of weapons in football.
Yeah, I
You
think
still
so.
have the best group of weapons in football. Sorry, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, let's say you get a 3rd-round pick for him. You package that 3rd-round pick with maybe a compensatory 3rd in your 2nd and move on up. You can go get a receiver.
Yep.
I don't know. The way that Brock Purdy plays, to me, has just kind of gone past the training wheel part of Deebo Samuel and what he brought for guys like Jimmy Garoppolo. He needs guys that can get open and one-on-one. Where Brock's going to struggle in the future is tight man-to-man press coverage, because that's where you have to throw receivers open. That's where arm strength does become an actual thing, especially when you have a team that can get to you with 4. And that's what we saw him struggle with this year. So you need receivers that can beat man coverage. Now, you can put on the game in the Super Bowl, and you can see that Brandon Ayuk was open quite a bit. But if he wasn't number 1 or 2 on those progressions, it's really hard to get him the ball. So if you can get another guy that can beat man coverage instead of somebody who can't, like Deebo, I think Brock Purdy really benefits from that. And it doesn't have to be a superstar. It could just be a guy that can beat number 2 corners consistently. And his superpower basically is route running. If he does anything great, let him be a really good route runner and good enough to beat number 2 corners. That is actually not easy to find, but I think it's easier to find than trying to just outright replace Deebo with another guy like Deebo. It doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah, trade him to an AFC team that gets a lot of zone coverage. Like, I would imagine, I mean, I don't know the numbers. I would imagine the Ravens face a lot of zone coverage because Lamar Jackson's so dangerous and you want to have a lot of eyes on him. Trade him to Baltimore. Trade him to Buffalo. Those teams could use him. But the Niners, I'm with you.
Colts
Jawan
with Anthony
Jennings.
Richardson.
Yep. Those guys are man coverage beaters. Get another one. That's what they need. That's what Brock Purdy needs for sure.
Yep. So I would do it.
But will the Niners?
No, absolutely not.
He's not going anywhere. They're going to restructure his contract and keep him around for even longer.
That's what I fear. That's what because here's what I'm looking at. So the guys that make sense to restructure for sure. Fred Warner, he's young enough to where you can do it. His contract expires in 2027. I'm fine with pushing that out to 2028. That gives him 10.7 million. All right. You've got Trevarius Ward. Again, his contract expires in 2026. I think he's young enough that you could push that to 2027. That's going to give them 9 million. Now, whether they trade Ayuk or they extend Ayuk, they're saving a lot of money there. And they're going to have to choose out of Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Eric Armstead, George Kittle, Javon Hargrave. Which one of these guys do they restructure? And I think Deebo makes the most sense. It's the most amount of money they get back. He's the youngest of that group. I just think keeping him for sure through 2026 is a mistake that they will regret in 2025 and probably 2026.
I mean, if they regret anything, they probably should regret the extension to begin with. But it seems like, given how much they called Deebo Samuel's number in the Super Bowl, they must still think he's really good. And I don't know how they reconcile with the fact that he was utterly shut down in that game. But they must still think he's good. And as long as Kyle Shanahan's the coach, I think Deebo Samuel's going to be here. Because again, the 2 players we've talked about so far, it's like all these reasons to move on. And the reason he's going to stay, friends with the coach.
I mean, the thing about Deebo is it's not him and Juszczyk both. Neither of these guys are bad football players, but these are the tough decisions that you have to make. Look at all the great. This is what people need to realize. And we get, as fans, I say we because I'm a fan, we get attached to players. And the reality of the situation is most players that are drafted, especially in the salary cap era, by their teams, do not stick with those teams until the end of their careers. They move on. There's going to be a point where you're going to have to make a decision on George Kittle in 2 years. He's probably still going to want to play football, and the 49ers are not going to want to pay him, and he'll be gone anyways. And he'll finish his career 1 or 2 years in Chicago or somewhere obscure. You're going to do the same thing with Eric Armstead, who after next year, assuming you don't restructure him, I doubt they want to bring him back. He's probably going to want to play another year or two. That's just the nature of football. That's the business that we're in. So don't get attached to these guys. Understand that everybody's movable. Everything is about the business. They're not going to retire in a Niner uniform anyways. you have to move on before it's too late. And if you wait too long, people aren't going to trade for these players and you're not going to save the money. It's just not going to make sense. You only get really one chance at this for all these players. There's a pivotal year for all of them. A guy like Deebo Samuel, I think this is his pivotal year. I think Eric Armstead, this is his pivotal year. Kyle Juszczyk. Next year, I think it's Kittle, so forth and so on. So,
yeah. You know, a pivotal year, a year to stand on business. That's my new favorite phrase.
On business. I like that.
Standing on business. Not exactly sure what it means, but I think I do. And I want to use it all the time.
It's like a jump to conclusions map. It's a mat with a bunch of conclusions on it that you can jump to.
People younger than 30 like, what? I don't get it. Dreams24 says trade Deebo for a true wide receiver. Or a player on a rookie deal. Player 8 years younger.
Yeah.
Or 6. Austin Cross. Who gets fired from their current team first? Shanahan or Harbaugh?
I think Harbaugh retires first.
Yeah, neither one's going to get fired.
Yeah, I don't think
They're
so.
not going to get fired. One day, maybe the Yorks will ask Kyle Shanahan politely to coach another team, but maybe not until then. Hey, Kyle, we might kind of want to go a different direction if that's okay with you. If not, well, hey, up to you. They don't have the same hunger like the Chiefs.
I don't know. I mean, I
Hunger
just
factor.
don't know that they know how to win like the Chiefs.
It's hunger. Dazza says, what's the point drafting players and not playing them? How many players of our last 3 years of drafts have been impactful? Hopefully this draft we move up and get studs instead of using all 11 picks. Here.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers do this thing, the red shirt thing, which it's been fine up until this point, but because some of these players are aging and because the depth is starting to disappear naturally because you're paying a lot of high-end contracts, you're going to have to pivot from that, and you're going to have to start playing and relying on some of these young players once again because the depth isn't there for you to just redshirt these guys going forward.
Cles Limperio says, can you trade him after restructure?
You can, but the dead cap is going to go up even more and the savings won't be there. So, yeah.
Right, because what you're doing is converting base salary to signing bonus?
Yeah, you can trade him. You can trade him, but you're going to have to wait another year to do it again, basically.
Cosmo says letting go BA is letting go the only legit wide receiver they have. Deebo is a running back. Also, time to part ways with Juszczyk and Armstead. Get younger and faster. Old Man Rock says, didn't they have unused cap space from this year?
Yeah, and that's added in. That's factored in. They actually get to go over the cap around $37 million, and they're still over that. So there you go.